Understanding mental health issues in athletes. College campuses around the nation have generally seen an uptick in students experiencing mental health issues. Student athletes are from a culture that's generally stoic and is categorized by not addressing how they feel, needing to push forward, and repressing their feelings in order for athletic performance to be first and foremost. There's this culture of being tough, which can sometimes equal not addressing the issues that are present. Also, an athlete's network can create an enormous amount of pressure to keep hiding their feelings. Think about the regular people in a student athlete's life. This can include academic counselors, coaches, NCAA compliance officer, athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches, and administrators. That's a lot of people, and most of it is supportive services. A lot of times, to an athlete, this can feel very supportive, but sometimes it can feel like I have a lot of people keeping their eye on me or are invested in me or in my business, and sometimes that could feel overwhelming to a student athlete. In a survey of about 21,000 Division 1, 2, and 3 athletes at 600 schools across the country, mental health issues were not uncommon. There were approximately 30% of students who self-reported feeling overwhelmed within the month prior to the survey. Now, according to another study surveying around 500 athletes in Division I colleges, about 28% of female athletes reported clinically relevant levels of depression compared with 18% of male athletes. This indicates a growing need for mental health services specifically geared to student athletes. So in March of 2016, the NCAA made a best practices guide, and it's available on their website. And the list is endorsed by 24 mental health and higher education organizations. Prior to that, the NCAA didn't have a set of practices laid out regarding mental health among competitors. There had been a discussion about a task force committed to addressing the issue of mental health. This happened in 2013, and with time, statistics showed that mental illness was a growing problem. Complicating matters is the fact that mental health issues can sometimes start off as subtle and really go undetected or fly under the radar for a long period of time. Around 33% of all college students experience significant symptoms of depression, anxiety, or other mental health conditions. Among that group, about 30% seek help. But college athletes with mental health conditions, only about 10% seek help. There are several tragic stories that highlight the mental health problems that student athletes and college students across the nation are facing. Madison Holleran was a student athlete, freshman track star at the University of Pennsylvania, and on the night of January 17th in 2014, Madison leapt over the ninth floor railing of a parking garage in downtown Philadelphia, taking her own life and leaving friends and family with more questions than answers. In a similarly tragic event, Washington State quarterback Tyler Hilinski died by suicide in January of 2018, succumbing to self-inflicted gunshot wounds. There was no indication to family or friends. The two tragic stories of Madison and Tyler reveal the prevalence of anxiety and depression faced by many of our elite athletes. It's important to understand that even the most accomplished and successful athletes are not immune from these conditions. Michael Phelps, one of the most successful Olympic athlete of all time, indicated in the spring of 2018 on a popular podcast that he had been severely depressed at times over his career and even contemplated suicide after the 2012 Olympic Games. Overall, out of about 500,000 student athletes who compete annually in NCAA sports, 477 died from suicide between 2003 and 2013. This is according to the University of Washington study, which looked at student athlete deaths. Many student athletes find it difficult to ask for help or access services. Some are more inclined to seek support in a more comfortable setting of an athletic training facility or among coaches, which is why we need more training for coaches and athletic staff and administration who work directly with athletes on a daily basis. So now we're going to talk about just a few of the contributing causes that may play into the increase in mental health symptoms among student athletes. The first being perfectionism. It's really admirable to want to do everything right all the time and to be the best we can be at every moment, especially as an athlete. But it's really not realistic, and it can lead to problems, including overtraining, which over time leads to injuries, which we know can lead to mental health symptoms, an inability to transfer practice or training success to competition because of too high expectations. This can lead to decreased performance, which can also lead to mental health symptoms. Feeling worthless and like a failure, if any mistakes are made, can lead to symptoms of anxiety and depression. Number two is a fear of failure. And this is primarily the result of athletes feeling that they are not enough in the eyes of others. The others can be a variety of people, including their parents, coaches, teammates, fans, the media, or anyone else that's involved in the athlete's circle. Sports competition is on display, and this can often put an enormous amount of stress on the student athlete. The experience and aftermath of athletic injuries can also be a struggle for athletes who rely on their physical abilities to perform. The process of rehabilitation, wondering if you'll ever feel back to normal or return to play, and the fear of re-injury can create a great deal of stress. In terms of lifestyle, lack of self-care can be a major obstacle for student athletes. Athletes should be proactive about managing their environment and surroundings and being vigilant about proper sleep, nutrition, recovery from previous activity, balancing commitments and social connections. And this can all feel overwhelming at times and create a lot of stress for the student athlete. managing change and transition. In order to be a successful athlete over time, you must navigate changes in your lifestyle, location, environment, social surroundings. An example could be a high school athlete who transitions to college on an athletic scholarship, only to realize that this new place has new challenges and new expectations, maybe higher expectations, and maybe they're starting at the bottom of the chart when they were coming from a high school where they were the top athlete. And finally, a fear of success. Although this seems counterintuitive and less likely than some of the others, the fear of success is real. Some athletes fear the responsibilities and commitments that come with being successful. An athlete in this category may not want to be in the spotlight or take up the responsibility of being a role model, or may not want to commit additional training or time that goes into success. There are a lot of coping strategies that can counteract some of the stressors that student athletes are facing, and these are really just a very brief overview of a few. But later in the course, we'll start talking about developing a wellness plan for student athletes, and that's where they really need to identify their own coping skills and strategies that work for them. But at the very baseline of what student athletes need in order to cope with their regular stressors is sleep, nutrition, and awareness of their thoughts, feelings, and inner dialogue that's going on, any red flags that something might feel different or they're not feeling like themselves. So trying not to downplay an off day if that off day seems to be happening more frequently or it feels a little different than just underperforming. And so it's that increased self-awareness that we all need to pay attention to feeling low levels of energy, feeling nervous beyond what is normal for us, anxious, not being able to focus. These are all kind of red flags for some mental health symptoms, again, that might be happening at a lower level at first and that we may brush off and just consider a bad day. In order for a student athlete to optimize their coping skills, some ideas could be creative outlets such as journaling, meditation, incorporating art or music into their off time. And sometimes some of these things can even be incorporated into travel time if they feel like they don't have that off time to really designate to things such as self-care, even though that is so important. We can help student athletes find time to work it into their schedule and to be really adamant about completing it just like they complete their training and their practice schedules. Another idea is healthy recreation. So making note that this doesn't mean recreation being going out and partying and consuming large amounts of alcohol or any other substances that can actually contribute to anxiety and depressive symptoms, but instead something fun that they like to do that is outside of their sport that would really be considered self-care. It might be playing a card game with some friends, it might be going on a hike, or any other number of things that are not tied to the student's schoolwork or athletics that would be considered something fun to re-energize them and to help them regain a sense of mental focus. And finally, it's always a good idea to seek professional help and to use the counseling services that are available to student athletes. Many colleges and universities offer free services to students in their counseling center. It might be limited to a certain number of sessions per year. However, it's always worth taking advantage of those. And this means even when the student athlete is not currently experiencing any symptoms. So this can be used as a prevention approach that we can all just use a space to kind of decompress and to talk to somebody, get our thoughts out loud, and reflect on what's going on, maybe get some helpful tips and tools for adding coping skills, but it can always be beneficial just to use the counseling services that are available.